My name is Ron Wilstein, and I'm the broker at Keller Williams Real Estate in Park City, Utah. Thank you for taking the time to watch this webinar on how to price your property to sell in today's market. If you're considering selling your property, or perhaps you've had it on the market in the past and it didn't sell, we're going to look at how you go about selecting the correct list price for your property so that it will sell within a reasonable period of time and for the highest possible price. Properties sell or don't sell for a number of reasons. It may be the location of the property or its condition. It may be the finishes found in your home or its views. It may be a combination of these things. But the number one reason why a property does or doesn't sell is its price. This, of course, is very important if you've made the decision that you do want to sell your property. Now, during this webinar, I'm going to share with you several things that will help you select the right price for your property. There are two key questions that you want to ask when it comes to contemplating selling your property. The first is, and probably the most important, why do you want to sell your property? There are many reasons why people decide to sell their properties. If we're talking about a primary residence, the reasons will be different than if we're talking about a second home or a rental property, or even a vacant lot. If it's your home, you may be looking to relocate out of the area to a different city or state. Perhaps the move is part of a job transfer, or maybe you simply want to move closer to your family. You may be downsizing as your kids grow older and move out, or you may be looking for a larger place because your family is growing. If your property is a second home, you may find that you're not using it as much as you once did, and so you might as well sell it. But whatever the reason, it's important to identify the reason or reasons why you're considering selling your property. The reason this is important is because it will keep you focused on your goal of selling your property if it turns out taking longer to sell than you first expected. And if you happen to receive a lowball offer on your property, which isn't necessarily uncommon in today's marketplace, you may find that you get a little upset with that buyer because he or she wrote such a low offer. If that occurs, you have to step back from your initial reaction and allow well-directed negotiations to work to try to get that buyer up to a price that is acceptable to you. Having a clearly defined purpose for selling will keep you focused on the task at hand. The second question that you want to ask yourself is, how much is your property worth in today's market? The real estate market is constantly changing, and you need to know what your property is worth in today's market. How much will a buyer pay for it today? Now, this is an important question to answer because every property owner has some expectation as to what their property is worth. And you need to know what your property is really worth so that you can estimate how much money you're going to end up with once it sells. If the amount is sufficient to fulfill your objectives for that money, then that's great. If it's not, then you may need to regroup and decide if this really is the right time for you to sell your property. This, of course, takes you right back to that first question that I posed, namely, why do you want to sell your property? Now, if you're selling in order to get out from a financial obligation tied to your property, well, that's a different story. If that's your case, you're just trying to sell your property to be free from that obligation and from the property. So, how do you find out what your property is worth in today's market? You need to get either a price value assessment, a PVA, or a comparable market analysis, CMA, on your property. This will help you determine the fair market value of your home or your condominium or your land. Now, I prefer to use a property value assessment as it provides more accurate information as to your property's true value in today's market. As a seller, you need to know the truth regarding what your property is worth today. This way, you can determine if there's enough money from the sale of your property for you to accomplish your goals. If you require more money than is reasonable to expect in today's market, you need to know this to be realistic about what you're trying to accomplish. If you feel, for instance, that you have to list your property at a higher price to net enough money, and this higher price is well above the fair market price for your property, you're not likely to sell it. And if you have no sale, then you won't be able to accomplish your goals which is driving you in your decision to sell your property in the first place. If you want to sell faster, however, you may decide that you want to list your property below its fair market value so that it will sell quickly, and in some instances, this may be an appropriate strategy in your circumstances if they warrant it. If you don't need to sell your property, you can list it at a higher price since you can afford to wait and take longer to sell it. It is, however, important to realize that there is a price that you pay when you overprice your property and it sits on the market for a long period of time without selling. If you list your property at a higher price than is a fair market value, it will likely sit on the market without selling. And if your property remains on the market unsold for an extended period of time, it can become a stale listing. And this is something you don't want to have happen. In time, you may find that you have to lower your list price multiple times just to get buyers to consider your property. Now, this is frequently referred to as chasing the market downward, and it can lead to you selling your property for less money than if you had priced it properly to begin with. This happens way too often in today's market. A seller lists his or her property well above the fair market value, let's say 15% or more above its true value, and soon that seller discovers that nobody wants to look at his or her property. Sure, buyers look at it over the internet, but no one wants to preview it in person because they realize it's overpriced. Well, after a certain period of time, the seller decides to lower that price. The new price, reduced, is lower than the original price, but often still above the fair market value of the property. Now, there are a couple of reasons why people do this. Often property owners have a certain amount of money vested in their property, and they want to get at least that amount out of it when they sell it. Or they may simply want to leave themselves some room in their price to negotiate, as is expected in today's market, and still end up with a certain sales price when they're done negotiating. Now, while this is totally understandable, sellers often find themselves needing to lower their list price several times simply to keep up with the fact that the market overall may be losing value. And so in time, they again reduce their property's list price. This time they drop it way down to the fair market price of the property, at least what it was 6 to 12 months ago when they first put their property on the market. But now, because it's been on the market for so long, buyers start asking two questions when they start looking at your property. The first question that they ask is, how long has it been on the market? The second question is, what's wrong with it? If a property has been on the market for 6 months or more and it hasn't sold, most buyers conclude that there must be something wrong with the property and that it can be bought at a discount. And more times than not, sellers turn up selling their property under the fair market value because they listed it too high to begin with, and now they want to get rid of it. They've become tired of letting it sit on the market. They're tired of the showings. They're tired of being inconvenienced by those appointments and seeing few or no offers. Well, you don't want to have that happen to you. So while it is reasonable for you to want to try to get the highest possible price from the sale of your property, and it is reasonable to try to build in some room in the price for negotiations, you don't want to list it so high that nobody wants to consider it. I should also mention that when you list your property for sale on the multiple listing service, it begins to record a history of your property being on the market. Real estate agents and brokers, along with buyers, will be able to see how long your property has been on the market and at what prices. If it's been on for the market for a long time and it's been overpriced, they're going to know that, and they're going to perceive that you're not a serious seller. I'm frequently asked by sellers, Ron, don't we have to build in some room to negotiate off the list price? And I always answer yes, but if we find that no one wants to look at the property in person or make an offer on it, you'll need to bring your price down to attract buyers. Then they usually ask me this. They say, well, I won't have any room to come off the price then. And my reply is always the same at this point in time. I gently tell them, if no one wants to make an offer on your property at that list price, you don't need to worry about having to come off your list price because no one even wants to or is willing to negotiate with you. I realize this is very tough information to hear, but it's very important for a seller to understand that this is in fact what happens. So, what do we learn from all of this? If you really want to sell your property, price it so that it will attract buyers and that it will sell. If you don't want to sell your property and today's market value is not an acceptable level for you to sell your property, then don't put it on the market right now. You only turn up hurting your property's listing history as well as contributing to an oversupply of properties on the market that will slow future price appreciation due to an oversupply of properties on the market. You're better off simply not listing it at all right now. I want to turn my attention and our attention to how you go about determining the right price for your property in today's market so that it will sell. To do this, let's turn to the pricing pyramid. The pricing pyramid is designed to help sellers see the relationship between their list price and the number or percentage of buyers in the marketplace looking to buy a property, and the length of time that it will likely take to sell that property. These three factors are interrelated to each other. Let's begin with price. There is a fair market price for every property, and if you list your property at that fair market price, you will have a good number of buyers who would consider purchasing it. These buyers are not what we sometimes call bottom feeders who want to steal a property at prices below fair market value, nor are they the select few who are willing to pay over its fair market price to get the property that is extra special for them. The buyers who will purchase a property at its fair market price believe that it is fairly priced and that the property works for them. This fair market price range is right in the middle of the pyramid. Approximately 60% of buyers looking for a property will seriously consider buying your property if it's priced at this point. You will notice that there are two sections above fair market price and two below. A property priced 10% below its fair market price will pick up more buyers who will recognize its value and will be tempted to buy it even if it isn't exactly what they're looking for because it's priced real well, below its fair market value. A property priced 15% or more below its fair market value will attract even more buyers, say 90% of the buyers looking in this price range. In fact, the property will almost be irresistible to a bargain hunter because it's a steal at that price. On the other hand, a property priced 10% above its fair market value will appeal to a smaller group of buyers. About 30% of the buyers currently in the market will be willing to pay 5 to 10% above its fair value for the right property. It will have to hit all of their hot buttons to justify them paying more than its fair market price. But a buyer who intends to live in a property for a long time may be able to justify it and willing to pay a bit more for the right property because, after all, they are going to live in it for a long time. Finally, if a property is priced 15% or more above its fair market value, very few buyers, if any, will consider it. It will be perceived as an overpriced listing, and it will not likely sell for a while, and then only if prices overall in the market increase significantly. Today's buyers, with the help of the internet, are very well informed about the fair market value of properties. Once they see a property and its list price online, they quickly decide if the property is priced well or not. If the property is priced fairly, buyers will consider it if it meets their basic criteria and requirements. And that property will likely sell in a reasonable period of time, which in our marketplace is about 1 to 4 months, depending upon its condition and its location. If the property is priced 10% below its fair market value, it will attract a lot more buyers and multiple offers are possible, which sometimes can result in the actual sold price being above the list price. If the property is priced 15% or more below its fair value, then there will likely be a feeding frenzy of interested buyers and certainly multiple offers. Now, if you're willing to discount your property, you will sell it quickly, as today's buyers recognize a good deal when they see it. Now, if a seller chooses to list their property over its fair market value, say by 10%, then they will likely encounter buyer resistance, and it will take longer for the property to sell. In our market, where there are plenty of properties for sale, overpriced listings are not perceived as good deals, and as a result, they sit on the market unsold. Finally, if you list your property 15% or more over its fair market value, there will be very few people who will even look at it, and it's not likely to sell for a year or longer. And that is assuming the property values are rising. If property values are flat or declining, who knows when it will ultimately sell. So if you're considering selling your property, you'll want to consider this pricing pyramid and the length of time that you're willing to take to sell your property. If you're not in a hurry and there are no factors in your life causing you to need to sell with your property within a specific period of time, well, then you have the flexibility and you can try for a higher price for your property. But don't forget about the risk of your property sitting on the market for a long time and becoming stale in the marketplace. On the other hand, if you're relocating due to a job transfer or for family reasons, then you may need to lower your price in order to attract more buyers for a quicker sale. And to help you use this pricing pyramid more effectively, I've prepared a special list price worksheet to assist you. Here it is on the screen in front of you. And this form includes 2 important questions that I covered at the beginning of this webinar, along with several other questions to help you evaluate the marketplace so that you can select the correct list price for your property. You can simply download this worksheet by going to the Files window and below my picture and choose the list price worksheet file to your computer. Then you print it for your own personal use. Well, this brings us to the end of our webinar. I hope that you found it informative, helpful, and as you decide what is the right price to list your property at. To assist you with this process, I would like to offer you 3 important assessments that you may find helpful. There is, of course, no obligation. I simply make them available to assist you in your selling decision. The first one is a free property value assessment. This will tell you what your property is worth in today's market. I will carefully compare your property with others within your neighborhood or condominium that have recently sold. I will also identify properties that are currently on the market and would be your competition within your neighborhood or condominium. Next, I will prepare a free total market overview, and this will show you how your property fares to those outside your neighborhood or your condominium that represent additional competition or have recently sold. This information is invaluable if you decide that now is the right time to put your property on the market. Finally, if you decide to list your property, I will prepare for you a free property condition assessment. This will suggest different things that you can do to your property to improve its overall condition, which will allow it to sell faster and in many cases for more money. Now, if you're interested in any of these free assessments, you may contact me by phone or you can send me a quick email and we'll get you all set up for whatever you want. It would be my pleasure to assist you with your real estate investments, so don't hesitate to contact me. The phone number is on the screen in front of you, 487-0151 from Park City, or toll free 1-800-535-0151. My team is here to assist you if you decide that you want to put your property on the market. And so I want to thank you for participating in this webinar. Please join me in our Park City Market Talk webinar, which we present live on the second Tuesday of each month at 7 p.m. Mountain Time. We always provide a current market update of recent sales, as well as cover a variety of timely topics that are on most people's minds. So it's there available for you to take advantage, and we hope that you will. So have a great day, and thank you for taking your time to watch this webinar.